The $10 million threshold that the government has introduced, above which there will be a 40% tax, sends a very strong signal that the government does not want you to have more than $10 million in your superannuation fund.
Was the Treasurer's original proposal bad tax reform?
I don't think it was bad tax reform. I think it was trying to solve a serious problem, which is very large superannuation balances and tax rates that are slightly too low on those. I think it had a couple of flaws, and the Treasurer, to his credit, has listened to the critics and addressed those flaws. One of them was not indexing the $3 million threshold, which has now been changed, so that's going to be indexed to CPI. And the second was scaling back the idea to tax unrealized gains, which we don't do anywhere else in the system. So the idea of going back to taxing realized gains in superannuation probably makes a lot of sense.
Are there genuine reasons why a government would consider taxing unrealised gains?
So one reason is that for the big retail and industry funds, it's much easier to calculate unrealized gains than it is realized gains, because they have a whole mix of assets that they hold for their investors. They sell things and realize capital gains. They apply those across the whole fund. It's very hard for them to say, oh, Kirsten's capital gain last year was $20,000. That's almost impossible for them. So taxing on the basis of how the balance changes makes a lot of sense. I think the government was also worried about self-managed super funds that have very large illiquid assets that aren't traded very often, and they're not getting any tax revenue from those funds.
I'm going to come back to that, but the new plan does not do as much as the old plan to rein in super tax concessions, but it sounds as though you do believe that the new plan is better policy.
I think it's better policy. I think it has a better chance of being adopted. I actually appreciate that the government has listened to the concerns that people had and then tried to improve the policy. I think that's how reform happens. We don't live in a world where governments can announce things and everybody loves them. Instead, we have to work through the potential unintended consequences, and I think we've done that this time.
Is the idea that the government has bowed to pressure in letting go of the unrealised gains tax masking what looks like a new line in the sand for how big government is prepared to let superannuation accounts to be?
The $10 million threshold that the government has introduced, above which there will be a 40% tax, sends a very strong signal that the government does not want you to have more than $10 million in your superannuation fund. The purpose of super is for people to have assets that they can use to fund their incomes in retirement. $10 million seems like a more than adequate sum for people to do that. And I think the government, again, is concerned about these large illiquid assets that people are holding in super. Government doesn't want superannuation to be a tax minimization strategy for property portfolios or for businesses, and they've now made that very unattractive.
And so if passed, is this likely to be the end of not so small self-managed super funds?
I think it will be. These very large self-managed super funds in some way are a legacy issue. 20 years ago, you could put $1 million in superannuation and get the 15-cent concessional tax rate on the entire $1 million. With the $30,000 concessional cap that we have now, with the transfer balance cap, a lot of the big concessions have been taken away from super, and we won't see people starting new superannuation funds with big property portfolios or businesses.
Do you expect that the government is going to take a closer eye at other tax minimisation strategies in the wake of this super debate?
I think they will. The government has signaled that they're really interested in compliance issues. So they're looking at compliance issues for small businesses. They're looking at compliance issues for trusts. I don't sense the government is about to turn around and say they're going to tax trusts, but I think they want to make sure they're being used appropriately.
Robert Breunig, thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten.